Hello, FlimsyLunchTray here with you today and kicking off our new map series of how to map. And in this series, we're going to be looking at all the maps on World of Warships that are available to us. And we're going to be talking about, well, how do you utilize and take advantage of whatever map that you may find yourself on. As each island or maps of the maps in World of Warships is created different ways, there's different ways you can utilize the islands. So on and so forth, as each map fundamentally is different from the other, but some things will apply, and you'll pick up on that as we go through this series. There'll be some things that you'll continue to hear me emphasize over and over again, where you too will be able to how to map without me even having discussed the map yet. So if you didn't watch Friday's video that I released just a couple days ago of the How to Maps trailer video, go check that out. That will give you details more about what this series is going to entail. So today we are talking about the map Greece. Greece is a map that you'll find clan battles, random battles, and ranked battles. And I've actually chosen a ranked battles feature today. So we're going to look at the map, and I've shown the heads-up display. And just looking at this map, as I'll just go ahead and leave everything up, or I can take it away, is that you notice with Greece, you have what's kind of going on here is a bit of a, how would I want to phrase that? It kind of V's out. You kind of start out with this stronger centralized, and then it begins to V out in this direction. And then you have these islands kind of in the somewhat mid-corners back of the map on your flank. This island here is, this side of the flank is pretty popular when it comes to what type of battle situations you find yourself in here. But when you look at this map, you know, each of the islands is different. You have different heights, different altitudes. You have different cutaways in the islands. That really help you to take advantage of this map. So I'm going to just talk more about the map, I believe, with this map overview, and then I'll run around and start showing you things quickly. It's easier for me to do that here and less time consuming to talk about it here. So when you look at the different maps, in this map in particular, you begin to notice certain things that stand out on this map, right? And as we look at this, particularly, let's see, let's start with the central part of the map, because that's actually pretty important. Is that you have these, this group of islands. I'm going to refer to these four and those three here as a whole group, right? And let's just actually just go ahead and exit out of the map. We'll kind of learn as we go, right? So this central part of the map is pretty key, in my opinion, when it comes to Greece. And I'll tell you why. And we'll look at it from this direction. Let's go a little higher, though. So as we look at this map, in the center part of the map, you'll notice pretty quickly here, as you move up with different flanks, is that these islands towards this flank, they're pointed more to the right. As you move over here, it's pointed more to the left side of the map. When you look, the same is true for the opposing side of the map, right? This island is kind of angled that way, this one's angled that way. And that is done on purpose. So when you look at these islands here, these are really great positions for cruisers. And I'm actually going to go higher, because I kind of want to show and highlight something a bit more here. And these islands can be taken very well advantage of when it comes to, for example, radar cruisers. Because when radar cruisers move up to these positions, you know, kind of hug the island as you move up, is that you provide really good radar coverage, not just for your flank. You know, for example, if you move up here, your radar is covering, you know, a pretty expansive area, right? Depending on the kilometer range of what ship and nation we're talking about. And the same as you can, utilize the same fundamentals for each of these 4 corners of the island. And because one of the key things about this group of islands, and why is it that they're slanted and angled in the way that they are, as I'm going to move more towards the center and I'll show you a bit more, is because of crossfires, right? So let's say, for example, why these islands are so good is that when you move up as a cruiser or a battleship even to these islands, if you move up here and you're sitting here and there's battleships or cruisers that have pretty good range back sitting over here, it prevents them from getting your broadside, right? Because you've moved up, you're nice and tucked in to these islands, and it basically prevents any crossfire happening onto you. So just kind of think of it, as the enemy team moves up here, you're sitting here, they can get the crossfire on you. If you're sitting here, as the enemy team moves up, they can get a side shot on you. So these islands are really good defensive positions to sit in, especially for radar cruisers. And as I said, as you're sitting here in these different positions, you get to utilize your radar. You get to really exercise map control, map awareness for your team, but also your hydroacoustic search, because that's really important in these positions. Because as you'll notice, just particularly here comes to mind. If you moved up here in a cruiser, as destroyers run up this direction, they tend to throw torpedoes across here. So it's good to know if those are coming, or if there's a destroyer in the area, or even a cruiser, maybe something like the Mentor, Edinburgh, where they'll tend to throw those torpedoes, and so you want to be alert, and especially German hydro, because if you're sitting here and you have your German hydro up, you can detect ships up to 6 kilometers away for the higher tiered ships, as this is a higher tiered map. You pretty much cut off any chances of the enemy catching you by surprise, right? So if you're sitting here with hydro up or even radar, you're basically preventing a destroyer, for example, being able to yellow rush through. But when there's no presence of a cruiser or radar cruiser, as example, or hydro, it's pretty easy for enemy destroyers to move up and utilize it as a breakthrough point to get to the backside of your map and wreak havoc behind enemy lines in your spawn. And again, it's just a really good defensive position. And I'm going to back out even farther because I'm going to give you another example of how these islands work well. Even let's say you don't have a lot of cruisers, but let's say you've got a lot of battleships going on. Ideally, what you want to avoid in World of Warships when it comes to maps is you want to avoid the herd mentality, where we all must go together as one group, because you're instantly shooting yourself in the foot because you're not able to set up crossfires. Crossfires are very important in World of Warships. So let's say, for example, you're in a Tier 8 match. You have 4 battleships, and let's say you're in an Odin, and let's say you have Massachusetts with you. Odin, if you're in a ship like Odin that has hydroacoustic search, it makes more sense for Odin to go here, because Odin can keep an eye out for torpedoes that might be coming through, while you in the Massachusetts move down this position, right? Because you're splitting up, you're being able to set a crossfire. The bad thing I see that happens a lot on this map is particularly these 2 islands here. These 2 islands, I see players where they despawn, and it's kind of like it's a whirlpool, right? You have this island here too, where they just basically keep driving around in circles because they don't know really what to do as they sit there. And I see the enemy team being able to take advantage of that, just push up and wipe out what's going on here, because again, they don't really know what they're doing. So it's being able to utilize these islands as defensive positions to fire upon. I can even zoom in here. Actually, we're going to get a little bit closer. Another thing is, when you look at these islands here in the center of the map, when you're looking at the center island, when it kind of looks like shaped like an arrowhead, is that there's an advantage to being on this side of the team, or the side of the flank. And that is the mountain ridges you see on the left side of this island here. Because, for example, let's say you're in something like a Kitakaze, you're in a Worcester, Cleveland, whatever have you. You can utilize this side of the island to be able to throw HE shells over because you don't have the high ridge like you have here. So let's say your team is winning the flank here, they're moving up, and you're kind of keeping that central position with your cruiser. You can kind of move up here, and you don't have to really worry about getting fired on destruction because your team's moving up, and you can start throwing HE spam over the island, where it's much harder to do that for the team on the other side because of the ridge, but they do get this little break in the island right here where they can kind of do that, but they're getting kind of close. Again, it's a risky position, especially with destroyers yellowing through as an example. So that's kind of a strong suit of that island, is that you generally feel pretty safe because you have that ridge. The enemy team, if you're here in this position, you can't really get fired on immediately from that direction because of that high ridge. So you can't really use that as much of an offensive position as you can on this side because you can throw shells over. Now, you'll notice that there is a difference among these 4 groups of islands, is that this one has a 3 group of island chain here. There's not as much real estate and landmass going on here. And so you'll see cruisers push up maybe, to here is a good spot. And maybe once they feel more comfortable, they'll move in and they'll try to sweep out here. And I actually had this happen several days ago, as I'm going to back out. And that was, I was in like the Massachusetts or Georgia. I knew that there was an enemy cruiser. He was sitting there. And then once he decided to come through, you can only go through this, right? You kind of, if I'm sitting more in this general direction over here, and he decides he's going to push through, the island's in his way, you can easily citadel and cruiser that comes through because they're sitting broadside to you, right? But at the same time, this island chain works pretty good for if you're a destroyer. Try not to shake camera too much. And say your flank's falling apart over here, you can use it to run around and use it to HE spam. You can use it to sneak up on ships, kind of more like, where are these islands here, where it's just one land mass, right? But here it's like, well, if you're a cruiser sitting here, the destroyer can come from here, can come from right through there, or it can even go all the way behind, or if there's a battleship parked in that position. Let's go back into the map view real quick. These 4 islands on the outer edges, they serve 2 purposes that immediately come to my mind. The first is usually you'll find aircraft carriers will park behind these. If they don't sit and spawn, they kind of naturally drift because they want a piece of lane mass between them and any battleships that might try to snipe and shoot them from farther away. So carriers tend to drift behind these islands. So this one's a little bit harder to do because you have to split. The other purpose that these islands serve is they also serve as a getaway point. So let's say, for example, your team has, you've moved up, you've taken this cap, but pretty soon you find that your teammates are dying and this flank is falling apart. And let's say you, for example, you're a battleship, your cruiser, or even a destroyer, and the enemy team is just pushing in and you need to get away, right? You can angle away and you can, let's say, here, or ideally, let's say here or something, but you can use this island as like a loop to get behind. So you're just sailing away and you're able to disengage from the enemy. Maybe you're able to go dark once you go behind the island. Same holds for here, your flank's falling apart, and you just take off back here, and then you'll be able to re-engage and go bow in. So carriers and getaway points if your flank is falling apart. That's generally what I see these islands work well for. When we look over here, the islands are more spread out compared to example over here. This area tends to make me hesitant when I'm in a battleship because of, let's just say something, you got the Benham on an enemy team, throwing a lot of torpedoes in the water constantly. It can make you rather nervous and moving through. So it's nice when you're able to utilize these islands like island hopping, like you go from here to here, and vice versa. It works really well, especially, for example, if you're a brawling battleship and you really want to get advantage of the flank. Let's say you're something in the Georgia or something in like the Pomeran, and let's say your team has taken the cap, you're doing pretty well, and you're able to move up this direction. When you get to move up and swing in around their side, what you do is that you're disabling this position. So let's say if there's a cruiser sitting here, when you move up and start flanking, you're putting his position at risk, which usually forces him to have to A, back up, which means now he's open to crossfire, or B, he just sits there and tank, or C, he gets nervous and he runs out and your other ships positioned here are able to immediately delete him. Yesterday when I was playing ranked, because I'm recording this on Sunday, I was in a Georgia. I'm playing in this area as this flank had folded, and there's just a Jean Bart and a cruiser left. And the Jean Bart, technically, as you pronounce that ship, he wasn't hugging this island. He was dealing, I think there was a hipper on our team over here, and he didn't hug the island. He was like out here. And because he was out here and he moved all the way up to here, and being to Georgia, sitting back and over here, I could just keep slapping him and chunking him for damage. And he couldn't make up his mind. He was going back and forth here, and we killed him. So that's why you have to be alert when you're moving up or you're falling back. What's going on the other side of the map that might put me at risk. Same principle applies to each of these islands. Yes. So it's you can utilize it well for flanking, but again, it's kind of open. So you're probably going to be detected moving up, unless you're an destroyer taking advantage of this. The same holds for this side of the map, but not as bad, because you have these larger islands that are pretty big and they're really close together, and you can move up pretty quickly, and even, let's say if you're on this side, break out to here maybe before you get detected by any ships in this area. So this serves as a really good breakout point, especially if, let's say, you got a destroyer who's spotting for you and you're in a Minotaur brawly battleship, and you're able to kind of follow them up and support them. It works really well. And then again, you move up, then you're able to put pressure on any cruisers or battleships that are just kind of hugging these islands. Because in World of Warships, magnetism is a real thing for ships, players, right? They just magnetize towards islands. Or now with a bit more the sniping battleship meta, you have more ships hanging back here. And I don't want to keep going on too long about this video and this particular map, but we're going to speed around really quick as best as I can, and being appreciative of your guys' time to showcase a little bit more of the map island features. So actually, for example, I'm just going to speed around, probably be another 4 to 5 minutes. You'll notice over and over again, and my hope is once we've done several maps that you two will be able to know how to map without me having done a video on said map. But you'll notice in a lot of these islands there's these cutouts, right, that you can take advantage of. Say you're a cruiser, destroyer, let's say your flank's falling apart, enemy teams pushing in, you get to use this as a defensive position to fire on. Or as that we talked about, kind of like a breakout point, where carriers will hide. And you'll notice as we move up through here is that you'll see that with more of the islands. You just find that in general, right? You kind of got a little bit of that, but really you're not really utilizing that small little cutout there. Let's see, let's move back towards this way. Oh, I'll just zoom in so it makes it easier. You get that here with this island. When you're a cruiser, you get that nice cutout there. We move to here. Oh my gosh. Have to learn. You get that another cutout here. There's a little gap here. When I'm in a battleship cruiser and I see ships moving and I'm using my mini map, I really try to take advantage of these little cutouts, right? they're sitting back there, you might be able to sneak a shell in and delete them, or just do damage to them otherwise when they're just sitting there. So always be looking for islands that have those type of features, those cutouts where you can take advantage of when you're in a cruiser, battleship, or even a gunboating destroyer. This island here is pretty high up, generally speaking. It's more high on this side, where it's a little bit more lower on this side of the island. So it's a little bit easier to chuck shells up and over on this side versus the other side you're gonna have. And then, you have this island, which is relatively flat, besides this mass in the center, and this faces more inward towards the map. But again, you get to kind of utilize it in your positioning. And again, like you can see, that island has a pretty low cut dip there in the middle. So it's kind of nice. Let's say this carrier, that enemy carrier that's parked there, you're in a battleship, and say you have a destroyer that spots the carrier sitting here, or your ally carrier plane spot it, and you're able to chuck shells in, then you can have fun and do damage. So it's better for carrier players to actually sit further back over here behind that higher side of the landmass. And we showed you more of those islands. Quick note on this island is that this island can be dicey if you push up to it, especially in the beginning half of the battle. Because once you move up here, if you're just going to sit behind, let's just go to the map, make my life easier. If you move up in either direction, you don't have you can't defend yourself against crossfire. So if battleships are sitting back here, cruisers, they get to take advantage of you, shooting you because you're just sitting those in because you don't want to get torpedoed. And the same for this side, that happens as well. And then I want to go to the smaller chain of islands over here and look at them a little bit more closely for you. One additional note I do want to say about this small chain of islands, I think I said it earlier, but they don't have as much real estate. They're not as big, so you have to be really conscious here in a cruiser, because it's if you don't play your cards well at this island spot, then you can get dealt damage to more easily. The center map island here, as we have the helmets head going on here. What I want to particularly note on this island is this chain here, that central part. So as a destroyer, when you push in, it's kind of nice. You can nose in and then position yourself in like a kiting out position. But usually if there's an enemy destroyer on the other side, you get proxy detected, you're proxy detecting each other. But let's say there's a cruiser sitting here, and the same can also be said vice versa. If there's a cruiser sitting here. When you're looking at this brief chain here, like a couple days ago I was playing Alaska, sitting there, and there was a Donskei that was moving across here. But because, let's see if I can zoom in without making you guys sick. See how low some of these gaps? Sometimes you can just detect, visually spot a ship through here, even destroyers sometimes. And I think players think that it's safe to move freely behind this island, as my training battle timer goes off, that it's free to move up sometimes, but you can be detected. And especially if you're moving across this direction or even more horizontally, battleships that are more stationed back here or even back behind me to the left can really take advantage and put pressure on you. Now, one thing that's tricky about this island in particular is that, let's say you're contesting the cap against an enemy destroyer. Usually what happens sometimes is that the enemy destroyer player might lose his patience and he just comes running around the island and he yellow rushes you. So that's why it's important, no matter what side of the island you are on, is to position yourself into kiting away. Especially if there's radar cruisers and you want to contest this cap, it's really important to run up on the island to protect yourself from incoming fire. But if there's no radar cruisers, for example, on the side of the flank, or destroyers or battleships, is to sit out more here towards the edge, because when I sit out here and they run around, maybe like, oh, he's going to be here. I already am in favor. I'm in a kiting position and I can get away. More easy to dodge torpedoes than sitting behind there. These islands here, we talked about it kind of as a breakout point to be able to move up rather quickly. I don't generally see or feel like these islands get played well enough. And I'm not sure why that is, because, you know, for example, if you're a battleship, let's say, kind of as an example, we get Odin, Massachusetts. You know, let's just say there's Odin here, you're in Massachusetts here. You can utilize these islands well to fire against. The risk you have is a ship or like destroyer yellowing through and slapping you from the back, which is always great to have a destroyer spotting for you in case that were to happen. But you get to position yourself real here, and you can kind of defend yourself and how you position against the enemy. And especially when you're down this side of the map, you don't really have to worry so much about crossfiring if you're kind of angled in this way, because it's just this little section of the map over here. So you can utilize that well. So I think in general, I've covered everything here. I've kind of done some dry runs and testing this, so I really hope to make this clear and concise. As I've talked about these different like tricks and tips of, you know, being able to position with cruisers, so on and so forth, you'll kind of get to see more of that in the future videos, as now the next video we'll talk about how aircraft carriers interact with this map, then battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and then that sixth video will emphasize, you get to see that in action. So you get to see how cruisers use these different positions, how battleships get more of the crossfire, the angles going on here, things that I've talked about in the videos as a whole. So, in this being my first video, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down for this series. Feel free to please give me feedback on your thoughts, what you think. If there's critiques, good things, highlighting the map, you know, feel free to share your own tips in the comments below. But I don't want this video to go over 30 minutes as we're getting closer to that. But I really hope you find this series beneficial, and if you want to catch more, subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, thanks so much. As I start this series with you, we'll kind of learn as we go, and hopefully I can even better hit on things in a more timely manner, or just some tricks of the islands in general for the different maps. So, until next time, take care.